What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is a special one. We have a guy who's been in the tournament realm for a very long time, Darren Elias. He is with us today. My name is Justin. I'm with Lucas. If you guys have been enjoying our episodes, please like and subscribe and comment. It helps the channel grow and we can continue to have more episodes. Darren Elias is one of the most accomplished tournament players of all time. He's a 4-time WPT champion, millions of earnings, and he seems to have success on and off the felt. So I'm very interested in getting to know Darren today and hearing what his story is. So Darren, if you don't mind introducing yourself and talking about where you came from in poker and how you got started.
Sure. Happy to be here, guys. I got my start playing online, like you guys. Much different era. I was in high school, so that's 2003, 2004. When Moneymaker was winning the main event was when poker got big in my life. My family was always big into playing cards growing up, so we would play card games at holidays, vacation, things like that, but never really poker. We would play like spades or hearts or scat, bridge, all these kind of games. So I was always used to playing cards, enjoyed playing cards, and then 2003, Moneymaker won the main event, and then all of a sudden me and my buddies are playing Texas Hold'em in my buddy's basement every night. 5 cent, 10 cent, $5 sit and goes, like super small stakes. I was always more into it than the rest of them, I guess, looking back. Like, they were playing just for fun and to hang out, and I was more into, like, the strategy and stuff. And eventually getting into online poker from there, playing really small stakes on the old sites. I guess most of them don't really exist these days. Ultimate Bet, Paradise Poker, that kind of lineup, playing really small stakes cash games. And I mean, it was a long journey from there. That's 2003, 2004. Probably wasn't playing high stakes tournaments online till 2006, I would say, 2005, 2006.
You said you started in high school playing online poker?
Yeah. I was pretty young. Kind of stole my mom's credit card, hopped on there, deposited $25. I remember kind of my first session. I was playing with my two buddies, and it's like kind of like we are, the three of us sitting around the computer, like each taking turns playing a hand, just watching it, losing $20 at a time. But it was the Wild West back then, where really you could win in any game, any format. You could move up stakes, you could spin it up. Like there weren't like killers waiting at the higher stakes to gun you down like it is these days.
So, do you remember at the time where you first spun it up? How did that feel?
Yeah. I guess depends how we want to call a spin up. I guess I had some initial spin ups in high school, from like tens of dollars to 1,000 or 2,000. I guess that qualifies as a spin up, like a 100x. I think I won a 5 rebuy for $2,000, which was a ton of money at that time for me. And later in college, I won an 11 rebuy online for 15,000, I think, which was probably
Wow,
10x my net worth or something. I probably had $1,500 or something. That was really one that launched my online bankroll, where I was able to play bigger tournaments, play more volume. Where in the beginning, nobody really knew what they were doing. I was playing 10 rebuys sitting on one. I only had $10. I wasn't re-entering or adding on. I was just trying to get lucky. That kind of launched the online bankroll.
When you started, Darren, and you were playing on these online tournaments, were you talking hands with your buddies? Were you online on forums, like discussing, trying to look up strategy or coaching videos? Or was it just sort of you figuring it out on your own?
I would say initially it was just me figuring it out. Down the line, I would say into college, I got a little more involved into the online community, where I had some friends that you play against them. And then back then, the like message boards, forums were a little more popular. We were on like Pocket Fives and 2+2. I wasn't huge on 2+2 posting or anything, but you would see some content by players you respect, maybe look at a hand. I wasn't too big into like the asking people about hands community type of thing. Um, it it is interesting just seeing back then, looking back, how people talked about hands. Nobody really knew, so everybody was guessing at all points, which made it a lot more interesting and a lot more debate because people had their opinions and there were no charts, there were no solver outputs, so it was a bit of a just people arguing about what they think is right.
Do you miss that era? Because I remember when we were talking to Gags, he talked a lot about how enjoyable it was to almost try to figure out the game.
Yeah, definitely. It was a different era, more challenging, more pure in the poker sense, I would say, less technical, less figured out. In the sense of like moving towards playing perfect poker, the level of the game, it was much lower. Like we've evolved a lot. We're a lot closer to that end goal of playing quote unquote perfectly or beat a computer, however you want to put it. But it was a lot more freeing, where you had a lot of choices at every junction, and a little bit of like Dunning Kruger, where like we didn't really know, so it was fine. Like, oh, we open 8-4 suited under the gun, like we get 3-bet, we 4-bet, and that might be good, might not. Like nobody really knew. Where now, especially pre-flop, the ranges are so much more defined in tournaments, and tons of examples of just stuff we didn't know back then. I would say that there are still opportunities to play that style of poker in 2026, and it does still exist, and especially in big field tournaments or smaller stakes, there's a lot of opportunity to still kind of throw the technical stuff out the window and just play poker.
Yeah, I've seen that kind of concept of I've seen Chance Cornuth talk about this in like big fields, right? Like you for guys like you, for him, your edge is like so large, right? That you're kind of, and especially in a freeze out, like specifically the WSOP main, right? Um, Trying to play like a lower variance kind of small ball, maybe. Um, Especially when your edge is so high and in a field like that where the opportunities like it's life changing, right? That type of opportunity in terms of not only the money but also like the recognition for your own brand, whoever you're signed with right now. You're with BetMGM Poker. Um, um, so yeah, talk to us about like I guess a bit of the big field dynamics and how that plays out for you, especially in like let's say like a Borgata main event, right? 3,500. Those get pretty good fields. How do you approach those?
Yeah, big field main events are a lot of fun, and you have to go in with a flexible mentality, stay fluid. I did a training course for Upswing, and one of the things I really preached was like Bruce Lee, be water, where you really have to adapt to what you're going into and not be too rigid with a certain strategy that you want to play, or really depends who's at your table. And if I'm playing at a place like Borgata, I think people are going to over adjust a little bit to playing against me from what I've seen. I see a lot of recreationals. I sit down at the table and they take one of two approaches. They'll either overfold everything, just lay down and let me beat them, or immediately go to war and play these absurd hands to try to beat me. Where I think most players would probably be better off just kind of playing normal, playing their game. So there are some like adjustments, counter adjustments, stuff that goes on in the main event, and a really big difference in re-entry events and freeze outs when it comes to main events, where if it's an unlimited re-entry main event with a lot of players, it really makes sense to blast in the early levels with re-entry open and try to build a stack. So I'm always trying to find some higher variance lines to get chips in the middle, give myself an opportunity to have a big stack at the end of registration, which is super valuable. In a freeze out, you have to play a little more defensively, and like losing half your stack early in a freeze out hurts. Whereas in a re-entry tournament, it's less of a big deal.
So, do you think in a freeze out, because you've talked about this, I think I saw a video once where you have the ideology of you should be in level one of a poker tournament, be there on time, and playing from the jump. But in a freeze out, I So I don't remember the last time I early registered a freeze out. I always max off a freeze out.
Hmm.
What's your strategy going into a freeze out? Do you think it still should be treated as level one, or my thought is if I can skip, you know, 2 hours of putting my life at risk, there's an advantage there. Is that the wrong way of thinking of it?
I mean, I don't have all the answers in the math sense. I know there is some value in entering a tournament when a certain percentage of the field has already been eliminated. There's some money there.
Mm.
We see a ton of people max late registering high stakes tournaments with 10 blinds, 15 blinds. People do it, and then there is some math behind it where it's probably not terrible. Me personally, I'm always going to be there from the first level. I think my highest edge in the tournament is when stacks are deep. So to be able to play 200 blinds deep, 150 blinds deep, a lot of times those beginning stages are shorthanded, and the weaker players are usually there on time. So it's tough not to want to play five-handed 200 blinds deep against some of the weakest players in the field. And you're trading some downside where yes, sometimes you will get eliminated in those first few levels and you'll be out of the tournament. But when you're entering late, you're never going to be sitting there at the end of registration with 10 starting stacks or 5 starting stacks. Or, you're usually sitting with 20 blinds, 30 blinds, or something like that. So it's more of a boom or bust strategy, I guess, than a freeze out. But I'll take my chances playing super deep in those early levels.
And does that mentality spread to like 25Ks or, the very competitive fields that you're playing in often now, where you see, I mean, I don't even know how many recreationals those fields get. Is it just maybe like three or four? And then, I mean, you have to be competing at a very high level. Um, and so, like, you still, I don't know. I mean, I guess you taking that, yeah, do you still take that mentality of sitting there level one?
100%. Even in a 100K or a 250K or something like that, I still want to play deep stacked early levels. And if I had the perception like, oh, I can't beat these guys deep stack, I probably wouldn't play. I think
Mm-hmm.
you have to have that confidence going in where yes, it's going to be the best players in the world, but like if I'm playing this tournament, I believe I'm better than them. I believe I'm as good as them. And you will see in those tournaments sometimes the beginning stages are interesting where you have a lot of players registering. I remember 100K at the World Series a couple years ago. We started with one or two tables, and I had 4 wrecks at my table, which was I knew it wasn't going to last long. People are registering, but you get some interesting opportunities compared to like the whole field composition, where obviously there's all these great players in there, and sometimes you can get some good spots early and able to play so deep against those players is nice.
There's a bit of a future game aspect there too, in the sense that like this really nice table draw is not going to last forever, so you're probably trying to play as many aggressively trying to play as many pots with them. Take your shot now before you get 8 crushers and maybe 1 recreational if you're lucky.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's an idea that gets slept on a little bit in tournaments is comparing your current table draw to the rest of the field composition, where sometimes you can have a really tough table with 2 or 3 tables left in a tournament, and if you look around and there's a bunch of good spots at the other table, it might behoove you to kind of avoid playing these big pots against strong players or big stacks covering stacks and bide your time, and vice versa too. If you have a really good table, you should probably step out and try to get in there and mix it up. I think players probably under adapt to that spot, and it's easy to go on your like autopilot baseline. This is how I'm going to play without taking stock of what's going on in the tournament.
So, one thing that is, I think, probably very important to you, and one thing I can imagine is really important to a high stakes live grinder is mental game. I don't think you can survive that world today with a weak mental game. So, you've been in the game for quite a while. How has your mental game evolved and grown as the game progressed, and what are some of the challenges that you face, or some of the things that you've learned to keep that mental game strong? Some, I guess, if you were teaching me to have a strong mental game.
I think the number one thing I see in like pros and up and coming pros is like never feel sorry for yourself. I think that's kind of the first sign of like mental softness when I see a guy kind of taking pictures of a bad beat or posting online about something or sending it to, oh, look how I lost this tournament, Kings to Aces, I'd have been chip leader. Like, shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of keep it moving. You should be hardened to that, I guess. And I myself, when I was only a couple years into the game, I fell victim to that too. Obviously, now I'm like 20 years out. I'm pretty dead to it. But that's something that I think a lot of up and coming players will struggle with, kind of wanting pity or tapping out just because of cards not going your way. I think not re-entering a tournament or something, getting discouraged and like quitting, not re-entering. I see that even at the highest stakes. Some of these players won't re-enter in a spot because they're like flustered. And on one hand, while that is a good emotional decision, if you can't play your best, don't re-enter. You should be immune to that if you are a professional. Where if you get too outed for a huge pot, like deal with it, go re-enter if registration's open. So I think that would be a big part of it.
And what is there any time where you feel like I'm at a table where I don't feel like I'm the best, or I feel like I'm not playing my best, or I'm being outclassed by a certain opponent? When is there ever a time where somebody gets into your head, and if so, even if it's a split second, like how do you manage and approach, you know, the feelings that come up at a poker table?
I mean, it's a great question, especially if you play high stakes. I think confidence is huge, and I've definitely been at tables where I'm not thinking, oh, these guys are better than me, they outclass me, but I'm just thinking about how much of an edge do I have. These guys are as good as me. I mean, some of these 100Ks, super high stakes tournaments, you get at a table and it's all regulars. It's Stevie, Kuhn, Makita, Nikki P. Like at a table like that, you really are you better than them technically? Are you better than them with live stuff? Like, where's your edge coming from?
Yeah.
And especially for me, I'm I'm admittedly less studied than those top guys who play all the high rollers. Where I'm studied enough that I'm not going to get overwhelmed making fundamental mistakes, but I'm not studying all the spots as much as those top guys that are playing every trade. So I know that going in, and my thought is like, how can I compensate in other ways to beat these guys, whether it be live stuff or just kind of picking up on patterns or history with these players where they might like to favor certain spots, certain tendencies, things like that. But if you do end up in a spot like that where you're playing against players who you think may be better than you or as good as you, overestimating them can be a huge mistake. I'll be the first to tell you, these top players make mistakes all the time. I think I was talking to another high stakes pro, younger kid, up and coming, very good player. I remember he's playing a tournament against Jason Kuhn, and he was saying, "Well, Jason's going to play perfect, and he's never going to make a mistake. So what can I do?" And I think that's a terrible. That's not a good mentality to have if you're playing against somebody that they're not going to make a mistake. So you kind of have to force the issue. And I think you have to remember that these players are human, and even the very best players are completely whiffing spots. Like if we're going to compare to a solver or something, they're not getting everything right, and there are weaknesses, and even the top players in the world can be exploited in some spots. So I think you have to realize that these guys, they're not superhuman. They're very, very good at poker. They're the best players in the world, but they are not infallible.
Darren, can you take us when you take us to the point in your life where you decided you wanted to become a professional, you saw that you were winning money online, you're doing well online. At what point did sort of was college always a priority? Did it halfway through you were like, okay, I probably want to pursue poker professionally? How was that decision for you, and what was that point in your life like?
Yeah, a lot like that. I went to school out in California. I was big into sports. I was playing water polo and swimming. Big part of my life. I love playing team sports, being on the team, the camaraderie, competition. I love that. But I was starting to play basically full time online poker back then, freshman year, sophomore year. And would qualify for EPTs, Aussie Millions, I would go to Monte Carlo, London, and I would just go. If I won the seat, I would go. I would skip class, and I basically flunked out. Where my grades were really bad because I was playing so much online. I was playing EPTs, and then I was going to commerce and playing 10, 20 cat. I was playing a lot of poker and not really focusing on my studies, I would say. I was doing really well in poker, building up a bankroll. My parents, this is probably sophomore, junior year, my parents really wanted me to finish school. And I thought it would be a good safety net. At that time, I didn't know if I would play poker for years and years. I knew it was going well right now. I wasn't set on being a pro poker player for life or anything. So I was a physics and math major. I wanted to work for NASA, and I had this internship to go out to Hawaii and work at this observatory in the summer. My first year being 21, so I kind of had this line in the sand. Am I gonna take this scholarship internship thing, go work for NASA, or am I gonna go to the World Series of Poker? Change my major. I kind of had to do one or the other, and ended up going to the World Series. Changed my major to creative writing, which was a little more flexible. I could like travel more, and classes were less intensive. Took an extra year in school, so really continued to just play a lot of poker. Chose an easier major, cruised through the rest of college, and I'm not sure what my creative writing degree is worth, but I did finish school, and
You might be the only person in the world who's like poker or NASA. Poker, NASA. I think that's the first time I've ever heard that. So that's an interesting decision making.
I'd like to know what it'd have been like to work for NASA. Like, I'm still very interested in space and physics and that. And I would like to go. If I could run it back, I'd like to see what the other path held.
Well, like those paths are so completely different. Like it wasn't like engineering or like NASA. It was like sitting at a poker table or going to space. You know, it's really funny. So sorry to cut you off. I just I had to jump in there. So this is something we've talked a lot with our guests. We've had a lot of old school guys on, you know, Queen, Gags, and one of the more interesting discussions that I have, or one of the more interesting topics that I bring up, is Black Friday, because that is almost like surviving a storm, right? And you had to go through that as well. How did you survive Black Friday, and what were your thoughts going through it? Did you think poker was endangered, and what did you do to get through that time?
Yeah, at that time I was still playing a lot online full time. Hadn't really had a ton of success in live poker yet. I feel like what was Black Friday? What year was that? Maybe 2011.
2011, I want to say.
Yeah, I wasn't crushing it live. I was still very much, my income was coming from online poker. I was an online grinder, and I didn't really know what it held long term. I knew it was bad, but I went right away. I had a buddy in Ottawa. I went to visit him. I got an apartment in some lady's basement. Just put a computer there, and I would fly from Jersey to Ottawa and play like series and stuff. And I kept playing. I was still playing a lot online, but I didn't want to relocate permanently. I was getting married around that time, engaged, married, and wasn't willing to like move completely to Canada to play online poker. But remember taking a lot of trips up there. So I guess I lowered my volume like in total, but I would go for week stretches, 2 week stretches if there was Scoop or W Coop or like one of these big series. I would go up to Canada, or I don't know if I ever went to Mexico. Mostly I would just go to Canada because I'm in the Northeast to play online.
Did you think during this period of time you're traveling to Canada, you're in the US, were you did you have plans to pivot more towards live, or you just really wanted to stick to online? Because I know you said your live results weren't totally there at that time.
Yeah, I was still preferring online at that point in my career, and I guess this leads me to like explain a little bit. I wasn't a great live player when I first started playing live poker, coming from online, where I was um used to playing like 4 to 6 tables, kind of hyper aggressive strategy, and when I would play live poker, wouldn't be very open to information or be very flexible. I would throw my headphones on, just kind of take this like fuck everybody mentality, play super aggro. And if you were playing against me at that point, like yeah, it's a 24-year-old kid with sunglasses and headphones, like four betting every pot. Like of course he's empty. Like no wonder I
Mhm.
didn't win. It's not very surprising looking back that I should have been a little more like measured in my approach, patience. It took some years to kind of work those kinks out live, and it's really a different game.
What are some of those shifts um, that happen? Like what? So for me, when I was playing a good amount of live cash, it was much more easy to adjust to a live poker tournament. But when I'm actually playing more online tournaments, it takes me like a good amount of time to actually adjust to a live setting. I think it's completely different. Um, what are some of those differences? What are some of the things that helped you become a better live tournament player? Some of the things that you didn't understand initially going into the live tournament space that now you do.
I think observing and realizing how unique each player's strategy can be, even if a player is playing poorly, what are they trying to achieve at the table? Like what is their strategy? Because you're given so much more information live. You can talk to people. You get to see hands you might not normally get to see, like showdowns, things like that. You get to see body language, all this stuff. Where online you're limited, and online to me was always more of like a fundamental technical game. Like it's more important that your sizings were right, your ranges were right, things like that. Where live has always been more flexible to me, and I think that combined with realizing you don't have to take every spot. I think early in most tournaments I got knocked out of, I was just putting in too many bets pre-flop from playing online in an online metagame of like three betting, four betting, five betting. Like, okay, it's WPT Bellagio. Like Hoyt Corkins isn't six betting me light. What am I doing here? So I think part of that is just my fault not being aware of the difference between the games. But I would say observing your opponents is the number one thing in live poker, and not I was probably a little disrespectful too in my mindset of these opponents, where I would just say like this guy's not playing well, he's limp calling, he's awful, whatever, and I wouldn't take time to break down what is he actually trying to do. Oh, this guy's limping and he's just trying to make hands. He's limping, but he's trying to run some bluffs post flop and then he gives up. Or what kind of hands is he playing from which seats? Where it was really lowering, I guess, my ego a little bit to understand these strategies I was playing against.
Yeah, that's something, especially that fuck it, I'm better mentality. Especially in poker, it's very easy to have an ego. Everyone has an ego, no matter whether you're recreational playing for fun or whether you're a pro, and there's obviously different tiers of pro, but everyone has an ego. And I feel like a trap that's pretty common is the idea that no one's going to adjust to you. Like, oh, everyone's kind of like static and no one's going to realize like you've been playing a certain way, and people do adjust, whether it's like even sometimes recreationals do kind of pick up on things. And especially regs, the idea, even if maybe a reg's a little bit on the tighter side, they are going to eventually sort of put their foot down. They're not just going to let you run them over the whole time. Um, so yeah, managing ego can be difficult. When you started kind of, I guess, trying to be more humble, trying to be a bit more nuanced in your poker approach, um, is that when you started seeing the success that you were kind of looking for in live? Is that when the results started to come in and you were really like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm coming up to this next level?
Yeah, definitely. I think also it was like a little self-awareness and like finding an arena I could do well in, where I was playing a lot in Europe back then, and terrible results playing these EPTs. I would go play a full EPT schedule. I'd have like a min cash or something. Back then, we didn't really know as much about like selling action, like makeup, backing, all that stuff. So I was just getting whacked at these stops for big chunks of my bankroll that I had made online. Um, and eventually had some success in the American WPTs, where I think I final tabled Borgata early, Jacksonville, something like that, and started to realize that I was having more success in these tournaments because I knew the players better, and that a lot of my edge in live poker was from knowing my opponent's tendencies, exploitative type stuff. And when I was going to Europe and I was playing against 8 random players, I didn't feel as comfortable, or as my edge was as big. So I stopped playing as many of those EPTs, and felt a lot more comfortable with the American player pool, especially the American recreational player at that time. I felt very in tune with what most of them were doing. Where the European recreational player, I had some really bad spots where I would be in a huge pot against a Euro rec. He would be bluffing. I'd call him with ace high, and the guy would have bottom pair. It was like a thing I never saw in America, where it was kind of a different archetype of player, I guess, in Europe that I struggled playing with, compared to the American player. So that was kind of where I started to have some success, playing in the States.
So you play a probably a wide variety of pools, right? I mean, especially when the WSOP is coming around. What are some of your adjustments? You know, because you're going from one game, like let's say you're playing in a 100K or a 25K or 50K, and you're sitting at a table with the best players in the world, and maybe there's not a recreational there. And then you play the 10K main event or something, and you're at a table full of recreationals, or you're playing at Borgata, and it's a table with only recreationals. How do you swiftly shift your mindset? Is that something you do before you sit down, or is that something you do while you sit down? And is that a skill that you have to develop, or a skill that is just kind of you acquire or have?
I would say both. I'm definitely going into an event with a certain expectation of what I'm going to get at a table, but you really can't be too set, because I've played 100Ks and got tables full of wrecks. I've played the main event and got really tough tables. So it can go both ways. But yeah, in general, you're going to have a different approach, and you can really get away with more in these main events. Starting with pre-flop, where you're just able to open the playbook a lot more, can open hands knowing you're not going to get 3-bet as much, and as soon as you enter these post-flop scenarios, you're going to be in a lot of multi-way spots that are very good for you, in main events, where in 100K or something, oftentimes you're playing a heads-up pot versus an elite player, and you kind of need to have the right range if you're going to make money. There's no like shortcuts there when you get flatted by Stevie. Like, okay, you just have to play poker. So there's a different approach in that sense, and I think you see it from guys who play, like, if you think about guys who do really well in main events, oftentimes they play super loose pre-flop because they can get away with all these opens, and a lot of winning main events is opening light and c-betting light, like especially if you go to like micro stakes, like a $400 tournament or something. The guys that are winning these events can just open ace 5 offsuit under the gun and auto c-bet and make money, where obviously if you tried that in 100K you would get murdered.
Right.
So it's a different game, but I think staying flexible, and also kind of like what you said earlier, I think in main events, especially once registrations close, your tournament life feels a little more valuable, so you might avoid these higher variance spots where you get your chips in, just because future game is worth so much, your perceived edge is higher, where in a 100K or something, there's spots where just kind of the chips have to go in, and might be a flip, and that's okay.
Was there ever a time where you were in a hand against? Is there a hand that you're really really proud of in your career? A specific hand?
Um, Man, I guess yeah. I mean, I try not to ever like congratulate myself too much or like boost myself up. But yeah, there's definitely hands that have stood out a lot. I would say I played a hand heads up in the second World Poker Tour I won. It was I won Borgata, and then I went to the next WPT Caribbean, and I got heads up against the recreational player, and was pretty sure I had a read on what was going on from like betting patterns and live stuff, and called down 3 streets on like King Jack 10 8 2 with Ace 7 or something, and like swung the momentum of the match, won the match. I remember being proud of that in the moment. I mean, that was probably 10, 12 years ago. But anytime you're able to execute on something, like you have a theory or you have a working hypothesis of what's going on and you act on it and you're right, that always feels good. And at this point in my career, I get more upset with myself if I don't trust my instinct and take the spot, or trust my initial, I have to fold here, I have to raise here. If there's ever a situation where I don't follow my gut, that's something that will like tilt me or get to me. So it's kind of trusting my instincts is something I've been getting better at over the years.
Yeah, there's this fine line, right? And I struggle with this because I think instinct is very important. And there's this like line that we walk now as players, given all the theory, everything, and all the things that people study, right? Sometimes you know what the right thing to do is, but then your intuition is screaming something else. And I feel like it's a risky line to walk because you can't, from my perspective, it's not like you can't just trust a really, really strong feeling because sometimes feelings can be volatile, right? But sometimes it's good to trust a really strong feeling. Like when you're playing in some of these events and your intuition is screaming at you, but technically speaking, you're supposed to make this move. How do you balance that walk?
I mean, I'm probably not in the majority of poker players that would take this point of view, but I throw the technical stuff out the window, and I always trust myself, and I'm not afraid of playing a weird hand or something that looks terrible. If I believe I'm right, I'm going to trust myself. But I would say not all players have the same mental composition or strengths that I do. Like I know a lot of players that admittedly like don't have great instinct or feel, but are still very strong players just from study and reps, where there's a lot of different ways to do it and win in this game. And my path has just been more instinctual feel than drilling against a bot or looking at simulations or trying to hit the randomizing and hitting the right frequency or something like that. I'm not as much in that boat as a lot of my peers.
It's one thing to have the feeling or get the impression that something's happening, but then actually acting on it, I think, is a big step. Um, and it's a big step. I know for myself, I think for a lot of poker players, you can like have a read, but it's another thing to actually pull the trigger and act on that read, right? How have
Mhm.
you been able to, well, I guess years of experience does it, right? Because you've been playing for 20 years, you've been honing that skill. But how have you learned to know when to pull that trigger and just really trust yourself and really act on that read that you have?
I think it depends a bit how much information you have and what you've seen. Where if you've only seen 10 hands from a guy, but you think you have a feeling, it's tough to be sure of that. Where you have to think about how big is your data set or your sample size of information you're basing this feeling off of. It's not some like whimsical thing where you like instantly know. It's usually based on a hand I saw the guy play yesterday or 2 hours ago, a certain sizing he chose, or a live thing that he did. It's really big. Like you have to think about how much data do you have going into this decision. It is easier against weaker players, I think, to trust yourself against rec players. They're more likely to make these easier to read mistakes or patterns to pick up on. It's a lot harder to pull the trigger against solid players. And the number one tip I give people, if you are more of an instinctual gut feeling player, then you have to absolutely completely throw out what other people think. It doesn't matter who sees your hand, who's at your table. If you are going to play this kind of outside the box poker, you have to be willing to look stupid sometimes. If you're going to make great plays, you're going to make very bad plays too. Is
there ever something that you regret? Like, is there ever a moment? I mean, when you play that style of poker, I'm sure sometimes it sets you up for disappointment. I know I've had like hands that I wish I could take back because I'm following this strong feeling, but it turns out to be completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever a moment where, you trusted your intuition and made a big play that cost you a tournament or where you look back and like, okay, maybe I didn't have to do that? How do you emotionally handle taking a big spot and being wrong?
I think for me, I've always been pretty good at self-analyzing, like being objective and self-analyzing it. So if I believe something, I act on it, and it doesn't work, the first thing I'll do is go back and look at the data that I made that assessment off of. Like, was that enough information, or did I do that for some other reason? And if it's sound, then I move on. There are some scenarios. I mean, it's super rare that it happens, but if you're going to play an exploitative style, the number one thing you can't do is get tricked, where some guy does something to set you up for something later. It's super rare that it happens, but in live poker, there is that possibility. And I mean, I can count on one hand the number of times that's happened to me in my career, but that is something you need to look out for. Some guy, I bet small with value this time, and I'm betting huge this next time, where getting in those like leveling metagame type wars. But in those spots, you can always also rely on your fundamental knowledge and kind of bounce back and forth, where you're not just out there winging it. You also know ranges and sizings, and you can fall back on that. So I think blending the two, intuition and kind of technical work, is the best outcome. I would say my biggest regrets are probably spots that I saw and didn't take, I would say still. So going back to what I said earlier, I can think my first hand comes back, a hand from a deuce to seven final table where I faced a big bet and I had paired, but he had also paired and I didn't raise. Like that's kind of keeps me up at night from 5 years ago that I didn't raise this guy. And things like that are the ones that stick with me.
Darren, take us to your first WPT win. You have 4 titles. Take us through that first one, what that meant for you. You had mentioned you were struggling a bit live. When you won that first WPT title, what was that feeling like of accomplishment? Of like, was it, all this work, right? It's kind of your life has been leading up to this type of moment. You've got it. How did that feel for you?
It's weird. Whenever I win a tournament, especially a big field event, I feel relief. I just feel like I don't want to sound cocky, like that's what I expected to happen, but like I'm relieved that it's over. And in those spots, I mean, the first Borgata one was 2014, maybe. I think it was my third WPT final table, and really felt some pressure to close it out. It was at Borgata, my family there and stuff. Get heads up pretty quickly against Kane Callis, who's a pretty strong player. If you're going to talk about like getting heads up with somebody in a 1,300 player field, 3,500, that's kind of a tough draw heads up. And we had this fairly drawn out heads up match where I coolered him in the end, but felt really good after that. And it just feels good to close out tournaments. I think that's something I've noticed in the last couple of years is the difference emotionally in getting first and second in tournaments is huge for me. I know money wise, second is tons of buy-ins. It's obviously good, like should feel good, but I've really noticed a big distinction lately for me last couple of years. So just winning and closing it out, I just feel relief, I would say.
Do you think that's because of maybe now in your career, you've had a fantastic career? You think now you're more at the point where it's about the accolades and about winning that title as opposed to, obviously the money that's behind it? Do you think that might be like a driving factor behind it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the accolades as much as like just me being psychotically competitive and wanting to win, like win first place. Like in tournament poker, it's kind of the only arena of poker where you can have that like absolute victory where it's like you beat everybody, you have all the chips, outright win. You can't get that in a cash game. You can't get that in a lot of other formats. Yeah, I think not to say I don't play for money. Obviously, money is important, but it means a little less to me than it did in other parts of my career. And I've definitely taken a more win first approach lately and probably made some ICM suicide type plays over the last 6 months or a year. But knowing that I'm putting myself in situations where I can win first place more often, and that means more to me at the end of the year than a couple extra bucks in my bank account. And obviously, there's going to be a limit on that couple extra bucks. I can't torch $1 million in AV, but there are some numbers I'm willing to torch and be okay with.
So, going through your whole journey here, and staying at the top. I mean, I guess getting to the top and staying there for quite a long period of time. What what does it take to stay at the top now? Because I'm sure life has changed for you. Like, you have a family now, and you've been in poker for a long time, and you've watched it change, and you've changed with it. What does it take to stay at the top and to stay competing at a high level for you now?
I think you really have to love it. I mean, that's the first thing. You have to love to play. I think if you're forcing it and you're not enjoying it, it becomes difficult. And that goes with studying, playing, anything kind of involved in poker. All that goes together. Um, for me, it's just I go through phases of obviously I'm very content at home. I have my family. I'm happy. I don't play a ton of poker while I'm home. Play a little bit online, but then I go to these stretches 2-3 weeks of playing very intense high stakes poker tournaments and kind of this rinse and repeat cycle. And for me, I get motivated a lot when I meet these younger players at these live events and seeing their dedication to the game. Especially, I mean, went to Korea, play these Tritons. I'm playing against these 22-year-old, 23-year-old European kids like Kulev and stuff. And I'm really motivated just by how much they care, how hard they're trying, and that makes me want to get better and not be like surpassed by youngers. It's that motivates me a lot to see these up and coming kids.
Yeah, it's a funny dynamic, and I feel like it's like that in any type of sport where you're kind of like the lion running, and then there's a pack of wolves just coming after you, a pack of the younger lions. I don't know. It's a funny image I had in my mind.
Yeah, and I would say it's a lot easier to get to the top than to stay. Not that I'm like at the pinnacle of poker, but like to get to the highest stakes than stay there. I would say it's a lot harder to stay there, stay hungry, especially for some of these guys where the money is not that meaningful anymore. To really stay dedicated to their craft and keep battling. Where I think at the highest stakes, you have the kind of different classes of players. You have your like established these a lot of bankroll behind them. I don't want to say playing for the accolades, but they're more competition driven. They want to win, and then you have your up and coming players who probably the bankroll is not as there. They're studying super hard. They're hungry, but still a lot of ego. And I think it's kind of a different point, but something to be said for game selection and who's playing what tournaments and what is that really doing for your bankroll long term? What is that doing for your skill level long term? It's kind of a complicated decision, I think, if we're looking at elite tournament players.
Who are some of the guys that you looked up to while you were coming up?
I was a Phil Ivey fanboy. Admittedly, like as a young
Classic.
player, I liked the way he carried himself at the table. Pretty stoic. Capable. I've always liked players very capable, aggressive, and like with some swag. I would say. I never really rooted for like the nerdy types, I guess. Where guys like Ivy, I really liked watching. Guys I play with now. I mean, I like playing with Nick Schulman. I like watching him play. Coming
I
up,
like the cool guys.
yeah. I would say it's like I played a lot against Adamo, and like while he's a terror to play against, obviously super capable. He's not a guy where I like want to model myself after, like table image wise, you know.
Yeah, so you've played against Michael Adamo. I feel like it would be horrifying to play a hand against Michael Adamo to a degree, because you know that anything can happen. Like
Yep.
he can 10x pot the river, and he's gonna have bluffs there, and you can't just kind of let yourself off the hook and let someone like that run you over, right? So one thing that I've struggled with is playing against very, very aggressive opponents. And sometimes I'll level myself into bad calls or level myself into bad folds, and I get uncomfortable. It's so much easier to play nits than it is like very hyper aggressive opponents, people who may be inappropriately aggressive. What's your approach playing someone who takes the mentality of I'm going to be the alpha at the table and be the most aggressive player?
I love it, frankly. I prefer playing against opponent like that, and I guess in my world over the last couple of years, it's Adamo. It was Ali for a while. Kind of would play that strategy. Foxen at times can kind of try to take over a table, and really, I like it just because you know what to expect, where it looks like what it is, and a guy is being ruthlessly aggressive. He's going to be empty a lot. He's betting a lot, and if they make a certain hand in a certain spot, you're just going to be out of the tournament, and you have to be okay with that. I think there is something to be said for differentiating certain spots where some of those guys they like to put a lot of pressure on pre-flop and flop, but they don't follow up the river as much. Other ones prefer to put in river raises. I think differentiating the spots is very important, but I always had a harder time dealing with like the capable nit archetype than a guy like Ali or Adamo or something like that, where they're just so aggressive and frequently empty. Where someone like Tom Marchese, who would play pretty snug all day and then run some savage bluff, and you're like, this guy hasn't done anything. Those were always the toughest players for me to deal with, like the capable, tight, aggressive player.
Interesting. That surprises me, actually.
Yeah. Because if a guy is just so out of line on every street, I mean, it's not. You just have to kind of fight fire with fire at that point. If a guy's going to be 7 pips too wide pre-flop and 3 betting flops, like you just get a good hand and you take a stand. Where it gets a little more nuanced with players who are perceived to be playing normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you see some of the players in our pool that play online that do really, really well, and you just think they're absolute monkeys. They're like 33 VPIP and 30, PFR, and then just blasting every street. You kind of just like click the call button, I guess, and hope for the best a lot of times. What's his name? Lucky Spewy comes to mind. I've always had trouble against him.
Mm-hmm. I would say we can't quite compare apples to apples with Adamo and Lucky Spewy, where you have to ask yourself, where is this aggression coming from? And I think at the highest level, it's kind of broadly coming on all streets, where if you look at online tournaments, especially in our markets, it's almost all pre-flop and flop, where these guys, they're not firing a ton of river all in over bets, empty or river raises or things like that, where most of the aggression in the games we see is front loaded. I would say you see it pre-flop and on the flop.
Talk to you about that actually. With online poker, you are a BetMGM poker ambassador. I see you playing online, and it's always a pretty cool experience. I know for myself to see really one of the top guys, and you see a little BetMGM logo next to your name when I look at the lobby, and I'm in there playing with you. What's it like for you to play online? What do you normally do? Do you playing like 3, 4 events? And how do you approach those? Because you're the best player that's in that tournament. So how do you approach those spots? And yeah, what's sort of your online grind look like?
Yeah, I'm usually playing not many tables, like 2 or 3 tables. I'll play Tuesdays, maybe Sundays while I'm in New Jersey. Play on BetMGM. They have that $500 tournament on Tuesdays. I like to play main event, and then during the series, if we have like a big series, I'll hop in the 2,500 or the 1K or things like that. And it's interesting playing against that player pool. I may be a little on the other side of Justin, where I think people play kind of tight, especially post flop. I think chips don't go in a lot of spots where playing on rest of world sites, I would see chips go in. And especially when the stakes get higher, when we're near the money in these 1Ks or 2,500s, I see a lot of players shrink up where it's kind of about context. And something I talked about in my upswing course was like zooming out and looking at what is the current situation, not just like the hand and the spot, not like positions, but this is a buy-in at the top of a guy's buy-in range. 2 big stacks playing near the bubble. Is he actually blasting it in this spot, or is he kind of adapting? This money means something to him. He's playing differently. So for me, my biggest struggle playing online is like not paying people off and not getting the money in. As the stakes aren't huge in our games. They're $200 tournaments, $500 tournaments, $1,000 tournaments. Compared to some of the rest of the world games I was playing 5 years ago, this is a lot different. But I think it's great to see guys like you and American online poker players coming up, and I think it's a market that players can make a living in. I think it's a market that recreational players have a chance to win in. I think it's pretty balanced. I like that BetMGM, our tournaments aren't going super late into the night. Some of these other sites have you play until 4 or 5 a.m. I don't like that.
I wonder which site he's talking about.
What site are you talking about?
I'm pretty content with what BetMGM and Dave, these guys care about online poker. They listen to player feedback. I think they're doing a pretty good job, and I enjoy hopping in there with you guys when I can.
So when you're at an FT now, you know, one thing that I'm interested in, because I guess laddering is important, and obviously we just talked about bubble play, making the money is important for some players. What's important for Darren? So, are you willing to take some of these? Are you willing to take more risks, or embrace the variance at like a big tournament FT to try to win? Like, what is your goal at? Let's say you final table at 25K and it's big and the ladders are big. How do you balance wanting to be competitive and win the tournament versus laddering for those essential pay jumps?
I would say in the past, I've been pretty balanced between trying to play a good ICM strategy and obviously not put myself in terrible ICM spots where I'm missing out on huge pay jumps. But within the last year or so, I would say I've gone the other way and made some pretty out of line plays at major final tables. Some of them gotten called and gotten lucky, where obviously some of these plays are pre-flop, and really made some risky ICM plays last 6 months or a year that have worked out with me winning the tournament. I think ICM is a tricky beast, and it's not necessarily going to be the end game best strategy in tournament poker. I think I watched an interview with Ike where he said, "Oh, someone's like, what's a hot take you have?" And Ike is like, "That ICM might not be right. That might not be the best way to play." And although we all study it, we're looking at simulations, and it is accepted that obviously we have to give respect to these pay jumps and other players' stacks and things like that. I'm not completely convinced, and I see these guys that go on tears, winning first place in big main events like Ben Wing types, and I see how they're playing, and I think it's really one of the biggest things I think about at Final Table is kind of balancing trying to win the tournament versus balancing what I know the right ICM play is, and nowadays the tools are even better. We have these sites like GTO Lab or something where you can put in the exact stacks and get final table outputs and things like that. So you can even see how fickle and sensitive these strategies are to just one stack changing. Like a 4 big blind stack becomes an 8 big blind stack, and your opening range moves 2 pips. Like it's so subtle, some of these ICM things, that very tough to adjust to on the fly.
Yeah, sort of what you're alluding to there is I think something I've talked about with some of my friends, the concept of like future game, but future game also in the sense of like table composition, right? If you're at an FT with 3 recreationals, 4 recreationals, and it's, let's say it's a 10K or 25K, that's definitely going to change your like, sort of screw the output, right? You
Mm-hmm.
got, you may open as chip leader, but you're getting flatted by 3 players. So sort
Mm-hmm.
of you have to totally rethink your strategy. And I think that's where a lot of the older school guys do a pretty good job. They're able to brain solve, I think, these spots a lot better than some of the up and comers who might be kind of obsessed with the sim and being right with what the output says. When there's really like a lot of outside or other factors, right? Like ICM doesn't account for the blinds moving, and if there's a guy under the gun with like 2 or 3 big blinds super short, we gotta sort of change how we play. How much do you take into account that, table composition, sort of the future game stuff, into your play?
Quite a bit, and I think a lot about future game. Where if I am, let's say I'm evaluating a big pre-flop spot, it's like a 3-bet, 4-bet all in at a final table. I think a lot about like how the stacks will be with all the different outcomes. Where if I win this pot, what will the stack distribution be at the final table? What does that do for my chances going forward in the tournament? Where does that put me? If I lose, am I out? Where does that put me? Because there can be spots where, okay, you're getting 25 or 30 blinds in at a final table. If I win, that puts me at 50 big blinds, but the chip leader still has 70. I'm still handcuffed a bit. There could be spots where you get that 25 blinds in and you're chip leader by double. That's a massively different scenario where now you can pressure the other opponents. And thinking about those stack distribution type things is important. Definitely with the solver outputs, the ICM, I think you just, anytime I look at those and I'm playing against recreationals, the first thing I think is just, this isn't accurate. Like, this is not how these guys are playing or responding. So I'm not sure I should be playing this strategy, where I'm probably better off just going off the cuff and playing what I think is right.
Um, and you see this too, I think, in earlier phases, right? You alluded to it earlier with early registration and the ability to rebuy multiple times. You're sort of taking these higher variance spots earlier on, so you can build that stack and accumulate all those chips, and then sort of be able to, as you're approaching the bubble, really be able to hoover up all the chips, put the squeeze on the shorter and middling stacks as well. Yeah. Uh,
So, Darren, what's something about, you know, being a top pro that people misunderstand?
Um, Probably that we are all like robots, or something, that we don't show any emotion or have any emotion and don't have fun or just like study poker all day. I think a lot of top pros, they have their like at the table face and off the table personality, where it can be a lot different what you see at the table and like what a person actually is like. Stephen Chidwick's a funny guy. Like, he has a lot of personality, but like people don't see that because you're just mean mugging each other at the table anytime it's on a live stream. So it's
Right.
probably that. A lot of these guys are like funny and they have hobbies and interests and like a life outside of poker, where I think, especially some of the, I don't want to call them angry hater crowd in poker that knocks the top elites for like being too robotic or too solver like. I think they make some of those assumptions where I think if they had dinner or a beer with a lot of these guys, they wouldn't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm sure that a lot of these guys have off the felt personalities. And I'm interested to hear who you're friends with. You guys are around each other all the time. I'm sure you meet up and hang out. Um, but there is a piece of me that does wish that I felt like in the past personalities kind of were shown more on the table. Do you think that that might be better for poker? I mean, it's challenging because you guys are playing a very competitive, serious game at a really high level. But it would be cool to see that side of players, because if that's all someone who's watching a live stream sees, then they're missing out on somebody's personality.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what type of person you are, like introvert, extrovert. Like someone like Daniel, I could never do that. Well, like when I'm playing live poker, I really all my attention needs to be focused on
Mm-hmm.
watching the hands, thinking, breaking things down. Where I can't like have two conversations and entertain and make jokes. And if I do that, I'm going to play worse. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that about myself. And there are people that can do that, but I think that's kind of an innate personality psychological trait that like some players have where they can entertain a table and make jokes. And I mean, you talk about Martin Cabral before. He's, I think, one of those guys that can have five different conversations, but he's still thinking about the hand. And I've never
Right.
really been able to divert my attention like that. Off the field, I guess my closest friends, Nick Petrangelo in poker, I keep a pretty small circle. So friends with him, really guys that have been around a long time, mostly. James Carroll, Nick Petrangelo, those are probably my two closest poker buddies.
That's pretty cool.
When you are hanging out, because when you go to a tournament series, you see a lot of similar faces. I'm sure a lot of crushers. Um, what's that high stakes community like? Is it like everyone's kind of got their own little circle or own little group, or do you guys all ever just go out, once the tournament series over, maybe grab a beer together? What's that sort of, I guess, camaraderie like? Is there any? Um, how would you describe that sort of community?
I would say the younger kids are a lot more in groups socially. I think the kids in their 20s, they're like talking hands on every break, going to dinner together, stuff like that. Where my generation, it's like about like me, Jeremy Osmus, Sean Winter, we're kind of like doing our own thing, and then you go home to your family. You have little kids, and like it's kind of like going in, going out, and there's less socializing and things like that. But I'm definitely more in the camp of when I'm at these tournament stops, I'm on my own. I'm uh, I'm going to play the tournament. I'm going back to my hotel. I'm mostly eating by myself. Maybe I'll play golf on a day off with a couple guys, but not really. The last thing I want to do is go to dinner and hear hand history all night. Where I think some of these guys like that, and they like the discussion, and I want to like check out at that.
Interesting. Okay. I guess I'm trying to think back. I mean, obviously it's different what you've done, but I think Lucas, when we were at Borgata for that couple week stretch, we were talking, I think, probably a lot of hands on break and
Yeah.
doing stuff like that.
Especially for
But
us,
it's
'cause, we're online guys, so you kind of get to meet some of the other online guys and see faces, and it's like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. You're this screen name, you're that screen name. So for us
Yeah,
online guys, it feels like getting out of the house type of thing, like
for sure.
taking a trip. Whereas
I
for you, it's
definitely had
it's
that stage in my career too, where I just met this guy. He's so and so online. I want to talk strategy with him, and at these live stops, I totally understand that. I guess maybe I'm just getting old and grumpy, but
I mean, you're in a different situation in life, I suppose. I mean, it's probably more appealing to be like, just want to go back to my hotel and like FaceTime my family or something. It's probably way more appealing than going out with a bunch of grinders and having a beer and getting drunk or something. I'm sure you've played with Martin Cabral, and you know, it's for me as someone who's watching. He's had this effect on a lot of the higher stakes guys who are more quiet, right? Like how when someone's annoying like that at the table, you're sitting with them for hours and hours and hours. How do you stay in a strong mental frame and not allow him to get into your head? So if you're in a hand with him, he's almost inevitably going to just be chattering at you. Does that affect you in any way?
No, I mean that doesn't annoy me or anything. How it affects me, I guess, I'm trying to build a database pattern on when he's talking, what he's talking about, what he shows down. I think if someone is going to give away that much information all the time and be talking during hands, there's definitely something to be gleaned underneath all of it. And I think it's a matter of figuring it out, what he's talking about when. I think it's a bit overblown stuff online where you see, oh, he really got under Foxen's skin and stacked him. Like, no, he didn't. Like, that's just how the hand played. Yeah, he's annoying Foxen, but it's $100,000 tournament. He's not gonna like get mad and torch the money. Like, it's completely delusional what some people think.
Right.
My biggest issue with Martin and I mean I haven't played with Kasuf, but I assume it's similar. It's just wasting time where
Right.
it makes stalling in every spot, taking the full time in every spot when you're folding and talking and stuff it is annoying. And while it doesn't affect the regulars too much, it can make the experience not pleasurable for recreational players, where it can turn off players from the game. And I know like he's in a 250K and he's messing with the recreational players, and I've heard some of them aren't coming back, where that's really detrimental for the game long term. And it's one thing to like have fun and put on a show for viewers or fans. I get that, but let's not waste people's time. Where you fold your cards, keep it moving, and then you can start talking.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the tanking if you guys lose a recreational player there's so few of them probably at that level where losing one could be just humongous for the survivability of that stake. um I mean, how rich are these recreationals playing at like 250Ks for? I don't know. I just get that thought in my head. Like, who are what is the large majority of the recreationals at these stakes? At like a Triton, are they like Asian businessmen? What do they look like at the World Series? And like, what? I guess stepping into the mind of a high stakes recreational, what are they gaining from the experience?
Well, yeah, the composition's different, obviously, at like a Triton compared to the World Series. Triton, we get a lot more Asian businessmen, like you're saying, Chinese, Japanese, mostly at this Triton stop now. If you were to look, World Series, a little more diverse, more Europeans, more Americans. But I think for them, it's pretty clear what they get out of it. Poker is the only discipline in the world, I think, where a random person can compete against the number one player in the world and have a chance of winning. Where what other sport or discipline can you do that? Where like I'd love to play golf with Tiger Woods or tennis with Roger Federer, and have a chance of winning. That sounds awesome, and I would pay a lot of money to do that. And especially if you win, I'm sure there's a huge sense of accomplishment for these guys and gals that put up 100K or 250K and make a final table, and you're legitimately playing against the best players in the world. I think that's awesome, and also probably a bit of like emotional money math where they have to play for certain stakes to feel a rush. I think as you accumulate wealth, playing a smaller tournament's probably not getting your heart pumping like staring at Makita in 100K, you know?
Um, yeah, I think that's a good point you bring up, having the chance to win or get a score. And we've seen this shift in online poker where mystery bounties are. I mean, I don't think you play on WSOP or other sites, but WSOP, the mystery bounties are just the primary, um, like the primary event each night. And recreationals absolutely love them, I think, because you don't even need to win. You just have to go into the money and have a certain amount of big blinds and just stack somebody for the chance to win a huge score and watch the envelope open. Um, a lot of professional players have mixed opinions on them. Um, you see the shift happen even now more in live tournaments where mystery bounties are becoming more popular. Um, have you played mystery bounties, and what's your opinion on that format of poker?
I'm probably the last pro tournament player in the world that has never pulled a mystery bounty envelope. I've never even got to open one. I haven't played many of them, maybe 5 or 10. I don't really like the format, but I understand as a player and working for BetMGM, like we're gonna put on whatever the players want. Like if the majority poker consensus is they like mystery bounties and you want it, then we'll put it out there. Doesn't matter personally what I like. I think it's kind of blending a lottery ticket with a poker tournament. It's a little strange to me, but definitely adds a luck element. Lowers the edge of the best players, raises the expectation of the losing players. I think it's good for the middle players and lower players. So not my favorite format, but I can see why there's a place for it, and may be good for sustainability for poker tournaments in the long run. If there were a problem, I think it kind of helps the like prize allocate distribution in the long run. Probably instead of getting concentrated to all the best players, it probably spreads it out a bit more.
Right. Shifting topics now. Being, you know, more of a live MTT grinder, I'm sure you've gone on streaks of not cashing tournaments, um, or downswings, and probably many of them. And what I'm curious to know what your thought process or emotional process, or like how do you handle those long stretches of, I guess maybe let's to expand that, both ends of the aisle, when you're upswinging and you win two tournaments back to back versus, going through what, like 4 or 5 months maybe without any score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something every tournament player struggles with, and live players were a little more at the mercy of it because we play fewer tournaments. The reps are so much lower, where these downswings and upswings can last a long amount of time just because you're not playing that many tournaments. So for me, I'm always just analyzing. I'm analyzing my play when I'm winning and when I'm losing, and I probably play a bit more when I'm winning and play less when I'm losing. I mean, I'm enjoying it more when I'm on an upswing. I'm having more fun, playing more tournaments. I think it's a lot easier to pull the trigger on spots, especially high equity spots, when you're on an upswing, when you've been seeing the chips come your way, when you've been holding trophies and winning. It's a lot easier to just pull the trigger on the next one than when you're on a huge downer and you finally make it to a final table. Like pulling the trigger on that marginal spot is a little bit tougher. I think I'm pretty good at it and staying even keeled, but that's something that a lot of players struggle with. And something that even I know a certain high stakes pro, he keeps logs of how he thinks everybody is doing. Like at these Triton stops, you'll have a spreadsheet. It's like, oh, so and so is down 2 million, down 3 million. So he kind of knows how they're feeling going into the next stop when he plays against them. So
That's dedication.
you guys don't need too many guesses to think what kind of alien, things like that. But there is that aspect where how you're playing recently definitely can affect even professional players' play, like long term momentum wise.
Kind of going continuing on that topic of upswinging and downswinging, um, what are your recommendations generally for people who are trying to build a role in terms of bankroll management? Tournament poker is probably the aspect or the discipline where that's the most important, and you have to be uh, considering the variance a lot more, especially live tournaments, because it's hard to get volume in. What are your recommendations for bankroll?
I mean, I think the old, I don't know if it's still accurate. They say 100 buy-ins. You should have 100 buy-ins your bankroll. I mean, I've heard that a million times. My addition, like using that as some kind of like loose baseline framework, I would add to that thinking about what your poker bankroll is. Can it be replenished? Do you have other sources of income? Thinking about that stuff. There's a big difference between like, I don't know about your guys' situation, but when I'm coming up, you have your bankroll and that was kind of it. And when it went to zero, I had to get backed or had to sell action or something like that. There wasn't like I can get money somewhere else.
Yeah.
Are you in that scenario, or are you have a full-time job, you have a business, and you have like a
Yeah,
poker bankroll, and there's a big difference there. And
yeah,
with tournaments, I would say realizing that not all tournaments, even at the same buy-in level, are created equal, and realizing that you can take much larger exposure in a tournament with a weaker field composition or a better structure than a tough turbo, something like that. Like say I'm playing 25K. 25K special main event in January in the Bahamas. Say there's 1,000 runners. That's a once a year tournament. I would take a much bigger piece than a 40 field Aria Poker Go 25K with all the best players. And I think there can be a pretty big multiple on that. Like, say I want to keep, let's make up some numbers here. Say you're keeping 30% in the tough 25K, you could keep 70% in the big field soft one, where I think those numbers can vary wildly. Really picking your spots with your highest ROI events and trying to get as much exposure in those events from a bankroll perspective is smart.
What are some of the events that you really look forward to in a year? What's your favorite? What are some of your favorite tournaments?
Probably 10K deuce to seven single draw. I love that game at the World Series. I don't get to play that very often. It's pretty rarely spread these days. That's 100% my favorite event, probably followed by the main event. I like the WPT Championship, World Championship in December. I like that event. It's really changed over the years. Like thinking back to my answer 5 or 10 years ago would be totally different. I like the 3,500 Aria BetMGM Championship in the summer. I think that's a good event. I like the Borgata main event. But if you were to pin me to one, it would be that deuce to seven event.
That is not what I expected. It's really funny. I guess it's because you had a background of playing all those fun games when you were a kid, and um, I have no idea how to play Deuce to Seven. It'd be cool to learn some of like I don't even know what the game is or how it's played.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be cool to learn some of those events because I think you have a really. Have you ever won the Deuce to Seven
I got
bracelet?
second, third. I got second last year.
Is that one of the things you want to accomplish
Sure.
before you?
I think I'd always thought that's my best chance of winning a bracelet because it's kind of a smaller field event. Actually, I think last year it got 300, but usually it gets around 100 players, and it's a high skill cap game where I think the edge in that game is probably bigger than any other game in poker. So the best players will win the most in that game. So yeah, I freaking love that, and used to play that format a lot in cash games in Bobby's Room, Aria, maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But games aren't spread as much these days, just straight no limit deuce. So it's tough.
So I'll be actively rooting for you this World
Thanks, man.
Series. I'll watch the Deuce to Seven stream, and definitely hope to see you at the final table. That'd be cool. Do you have a bracelet?
Yeah, actually, after that second place, I came home and I played the an online bracelet event from Jersey and won an $800 tournament last summer.
That had to be a lot of runners in that.
Yeah, a ton, and not where I was expecting to find a bracelet, but panned out.
That's cool.
Would you value a live bracelet more than an online bracelet? I know there's been some discussion about whether online or whether an online bracelet's a real bracelet and all that type of stuff. Where do you sort of
Yeah,
stand on that?
yeah, I think so. I would value it a little more. I think all bracelets have different value, kind of in my head. Even like among live bracelets, like certain ones I think are more coveted than others, like to win the main event or the 50K PPC or something like that. Some of these 10K mixed championship events, I think those are prestigious. Um, a big high roller, no limit event, 25K, 100K, those are prestigious. Where if you win the 10K super turbo bounty, I think that's probably worth a little less in my head than a tough no limit event.
What's the deepest run that you've had in the main event?
Really not great. Maybe 200th or so. That's definitely something on my list of left to do in poker bucket list stuff where I've underperformed in the main event. I would say I've played every year since I've been 21, and I don't think I cashed for the first 10 or 12 years, something like that, and haven't had any real serious runs. And I know I have one in me. I think I'm good in those types of fields. I can handle a 7, 8, 10-day tournament. So that's definitely something that's on my radar, where my second leg when I go out to play in July at the World Series is kind of just about the main event.
Okay. You speak so professionally. I was waiting for you to say I'm due, but you would never say that. But I'll believe that you're due.
You can think it.
I feel like that would be a rush of a lifetime. I mean, you have to get so lucky. It's I've heard players who've like busted 50th or 40th talk. I mean that the the thought of grinding for that many days and getting that close, it has to be so bittersweet because the 200 you're kind of inching there. I don't know. Maybe you would be just more like, okay, well, good run, like let it go. But I know a lot of players who like get to that close. It's got to be a little heartbreaking. Do you deal with a little bit of heartbreak in poker still, or is it more just are you able to let things go very quickly? Because it's something that I've had to work on for sure.
Depends on the spot. If it's like a routine spot or like kind of a normal thing, maybe 30 minutes or an hour, I'm over it.
Okay.
I'm pretty quick to move on. If it's something that's like a once in a year, once every couple years, some of those sting a little longer. Getting second, I got second in Florida WPT a couple years ago, where had the Chibley to heads up. That would have been my 5th title. Playing a recreational player, lost that. Also, 100 buy-in heads up match, so 350K heads up match. That one stung a little bit, stuck with me a little bit. But as long as you're happy with your play, I mean, that's what it really comes down to for me. Like analyzing my play, am I happy with it? So if I get in a big spot like that and I feel like I didn't play my best, that will hurt. It'll stick with me. But I'm pretty good at moving on. I would say on the main event front, there's also something to be said for just the excitement and adrenaline of waking up every morning for like 7 or 8 days and having that opportunity. Like you're still in the main event. You get to go play day 7 and unbag millions of chips and you're still in the hunt. I mean, I've had that feeling in like 4 or 5 day WPT tournaments, and it's really exciting. I enjoy that. So to have that in the main event on day 9, I can only imagine what that's like, just from like a physical, emotional perspective. That's got to be a lot of fun.
Exhausting too. You probably I mean, what would you I remember like I was younger and like I didn't even play tournaments at the time, but I remember making it day 2. at the World Series, and I couldn't sleep that night. I think like I woke up and I was exhausted, but the adrenaline and the appetite for winning a lot of money keeps you going. I can't imagine like a 9-day tournament series. I think that pri- prioritizing taking care of yourself not only during the tournament stretch but before, so your body has a lot of energy um, and endurance to work from. I'm sure that's something that you take into account, where you're probably taking care of your body so that you can perform at a high level. I think that poker is not only just like some strategic game, but it will in these big spots, it will test your physical endurance just as much as your mental and emotional endurance.
100%. And I'm not perfect. I'm not the best with it. I struggle where as soon as I start to get into later days of tournaments, like high equity, intense spots, I don't eat very much. It's kind of my one leak where I'm not even thinking about food. So I remember LAPC, I think, was a 6-day tournament where I final tabled it, and I lost like 12 pounds or something, where I ended up being chip leader of the final table, but I lost so much weight just because really wasn't eating much. Maybe coffee during the day and then room service at night after I bag. But really just so focused on the task at hand that I not taking care of my body. And it's something like the main event that would really catch up with you, where one bad night of sleep, one mistake on day 6, and you're gone. So it's super high pressure, those spots, and really staying mentally sharp is huge. My last trip at Aria, I was up till midnight, 1 a.m., 5, 6 days in a row. I made some final tables. I was making some runs, and especially in spots like that where you're constantly on a shot clock at final tables in complicated decisions, and you're tired, is something you want to try to avoid if possible. So I think there are guys that do a better job than me of like making sure their body's a machine and fueled right and slept right, but something that's really important for sure.
Yeah, especially the shot clocks. I don't play much live, but over the summer I was at the Borgata, and the only time I've ever played with shot clock was actually in the heads up tournament, and that was an experience that was like actually kind of, it put me on edge almost, and I wasn't doing it for that long. I mean, it was like you play your heads up match, you're done, and then you leave. But I remember it was like it actually took my mind away from the strategy a bit, and I sort of had to like now keep an eye on this shot clock. Whereas like online, you don't really have to worry about it, right? Everything's kind of automatic in a sense, unless you're at an FT or in a big spot. Um, so I can only imagine what that's like to do that for 10, 12 hour days and then do it over an 8 day stretch. That must be the mental toll, I guess. I guess maybe you get used to it, but I still imagine there's like some pressure there, especially if you don't have time banks and you're running deep in something. It can be stressful.
Yeah, I had that happen in one of the Aria Poker Go ones last thing. I used all my time banks in this one hand. I made a big fold on the river. But then I had to play like 4 or 5 more hours bubble final table stage with no time banks, and just white knuckling it. It's kind of exciting, I guess. But talk about going with your gut. Like, oh, you got 20 seconds pre-flop. It's a different experience for sure.
Yeah. Triton now is introduced. I saw they're trying the chess clock, I know.
I saw that.
A lot of people have been clamoring about the tanking, especially live, and GG kind of had the chess clock online, I believe, but now Triton's bringing it to the live scene. Are you looking forward to playing that new format? What's your sort of take on that?
I'm not sure. I guess I'm holding out judgment to see like exactly how it works and how it's implemented. I will say I don't think their previous time format was broken. I think it was fine. And I often think a lot of these clock systems are solving a problem that doesn't really exist. I don't see a ton of people stalling, taking the full 30 seconds. I really don't see that much. Triton was already down to like 10 seconds, I think, on the bubble, or they have some shortened pre-flop version when it gets near the money. Most of the time they draw for hands where people can't like angle the button on a blind jump or something like that. I also don't know with the chess clock, like, so I don't really know how it works. Like, so could you take 10 minutes and stall one hand because you have
Yeah.
a longer clock?
So essentially, the way it works is I believe you get 5 or 10 seconds for every preflop decision, and then you have one big time bank. So you don't get time chips that like 30 second, 30 second. You just have one, let's say 10 minutes worth of time bank to start the tournament. And as you reach different like percentages of the field or stages of the tournament, they will add time to your. I don't know how much time it's starting or how much time they're adding per stage, but
Yeah.
every stage they're adding X amount of time, and you can use all of that time if you want on one hand, but you won't replenish until either there's a next replenish or if you're at an FT, that's it, you're done. You just have 10 to, whatever the standard pre-flop time is, and then whatever the post-flop standard time is.
Yeah. It seems like a sound system, and I like the idea of that, being able to use as much time as you want on one hand and being rewarded for playing quickly on other hands. I think that's how poker should be. If you are somebody who's taking 30 seconds of decision on every decision, you should be penalized, I think, a little bit. I think that's fair. I just hope it works. I don't like giving people the opportunity for one mega stall is my only concern.
Mm-hmm.
A spot where, like, if a guy was incentivized to take 10 or 15 minutes, I think poker players know that most of their decisions are automatic and they can get away with just using the 5 seconds 95% of the time or something. So I do worry if there were ever a spot where someone could use most of their clock. That would be annoying.
Yeah, I guess maybe I guess once if you're short, the prospect of you having a bigger spot later on is pretty slim anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I could see the issues. It's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out, and yeah, maybe it's an over-engineered solution to a non-existent problem. We'll see. Maybe it'll catch on. Maybe it
Yeah,
won't.
if a guy has 12 big blinds and he has 9 minutes on his clock, a professional player might say, like, I know these spots pretty well. I'm going to take
Yeah.
8 of my minutes and just leave myself a minute or something.
Yeah.
Tank the bubble out.
Yeah.
So to plug in, you're a BetMGM ambassador, and you're frequently at Borgata for the series that run. I guess right now it's fall, spring, and summer. And to compliment them, I think they do a great job with how they set up their series. And of course, there's always things to work on. And poker players are natural complainers, so
No,
you
never.
you can never make everyone happy. But from my experience, I think that the staff is really, really good there. And my experience has been great since I've kind of gone there for certain events. The lines are quick; you can register online. But to get your opinion or your feedback, just to, I guess, give them some recognition. What do you think of Borgata and what they're doing, where they're going, and what BetMGM as a whole is, starting to do in this current poker climate?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to be a part of and see the progress we've made since when I came on kind of pre-COVID, like 6-7 years ago. My biggest push was integrating online and live poker and letting people win satellites to these live events at MGM properties online. I had that experience as a young up and coming player. I knew how exciting it was to get to go play a big live event, stay in the hotel, flight is paid for. Like, I thought that was awesome. And really want BetMGM's online players to have that opportunity. So I want more of those events. I want bigger events and synergy really between the properties, because MGM has all these amazing live properties, the Borgata, Aria, MGM National Harbor, Beau Rivage if you're in the South, Bellagio, really all these poker destinations that we can link up with online players and experiences where I love that. Dave and the team, Kelly at Borgata, they do a good job. You can register, like you said, from your online account live in 10 seconds. That didn't exist 5 years ago. So they're doing a good job implementing these things and really building out these series and these packages. Obviously, I have more ideas. I always want to do more and really push the envelope with new stuff. And it's just a matter of what we can get done and what we can get rolled out logistically.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of complaints from people. Like, I just feel like all poker players are never going to be happy. So, to give you guys like a ton of credit, like the player, being listened to. I think you guys, like BetMGM specifically, Kelly, Dave, they really take player feedback into consideration, and that feels really, really good. And I'm just really, really happy, and I think I just want to give you guys the recognition that you deserve, and all of them, just for being incredible for the game and always doing the best for the player experience. I think that's the most. Like, we can nitpick certain structures or this and that, but I think at the end of the day, it's like BetMGM right now is doing their absolute best to make the player experience the best, and you guys are putting the players first. And maybe that's my perception, but
no, I appreciate that. I know the team will appreciate that. Dave, he's got a Discord chat. He's talking to all the regulars, getting feedback, and being on the other side of it, like not the player side, but like the BetMGM side. The hardest part is distilling this player feedback, because in the end, most players are really only worried about themselves. Like, if a guy likes $300 PLO tournaments, then he's going to be like, you got to do more $300 PLO tournaments. But like, that isn't necessarily what all the people want. And sometimes the loudest voices don't represent the consensus of the player pool. And that happens online, that happens live, with mixed games, with everything. So it's a matter of distilling the feedback and kind of seeing what the player pool as a whole wants. In the end, players kind of will vote with their wallets, like what events do best, what events draw the biggest numbers, and we're going to run more of those events.
The daily C note.
Love the C note, man.
The team at MGM has a tough task, taking in all that Discord feedback and making decisions and seeing what's right, not just for the few people in there, but also for the larger ecosystem. I'm sure you had actually a big part of I think MGM had a bigger series, biggest series.
Yep.
I'm sure you had a hand in that. How did you like that experience? I thought it was pretty cool. They ran some online satellites to that. I know you're bringing that up. What was your experience like trying to, bring a high stakes community over to the Borgata for a high stakes series?
I was pretty happy with the turnouts. I think we had a 10K high roller type tournament that got around 70 entrants, which is by far the best we've ever done at Borgata with that kind of event, that kind of high roller event. And Borgata, for one reason or another, has always really excelled with low buy-in big field tournaments. That's kind of been our bread and butter for like 20 years. Like a $500 tournament, 2 million guaranteed, almighty, opener, kickoff, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
These tournaments have always done really well. And we're looking to push the envelope and run more bigger buy-in events. And I think we'll probably try to bring back that series in September again. And the hardest draw is just getting players to travel from Las Vegas to Atlantic City, because that is where a lot of that player pool lives. If we're talking about running high stakes, high roller type tournaments, getting players to travel, incentivizing them to travel. That's something we're working on. I'm going to try to network with my player pool and see who we can get to come out. But I think it's great trying these higher buy-in events and give the player pool a little something different, where most of the year you will get the usual Borgata offerings with the 2,500 3K quarterly main events and smaller buy-in big field no limit events. In September we can do something a little bigger.
Yeah, I know. We had Funaro on the podcast maybe a month ago now at this point, and we were talking to him about buy-ins and stuff, and he's always advocating for bigger, bigger, bigger. Especially, he was like, if it was in his shoes, he'd want a 1K nightly turbo online. Um, so he'll be out there at I'm sure for the next edition of this big buy-in series that you guys will host.
Yeah,
Frank
happy to
was
have him. Yeah, I want to play big too, but you have to think about like who else is gonna come play. I think is kind of the question I'm always asking myself, where
Yeah,
we're weighing whether or not to do a 25K or a 10K for like the high roller, and I think
yeah.
a 10K probably ends up drawing a bigger prize pool at Borgata than a 25K would, even though the buy-in is 40% or whatever that is.
Frank had a hilarious comment on the pod. He said that he said increase the main event to 20K, not at Borgata, just like the WSOP main event,
Mm-hmm.
and have it go up each year with inflation. Like, what are you gonna make it $20,066, and then like have yeah, it's just
I
to
like
plug
Frank,
that
but that's the
in.
stupidest thing I've ever heard. What if
He's
there's a big
hilarious.
inflation year? It's like you have to like calculate the inflation rate,
Yeah.
show people how
What if
much their
inflation
money
was
is
off the
valuing.
past year, the numbers they were working with? Yeah. Yeah, but
He
Borgata,
hates.
the BetMGM team also, they have the online satellites I was talking about. They also have the step satellites. So you
Mhm.
could potentially get in off of like, a $10 ticket that becomes a $100 ticket that becomes a 1K ticket, maybe a 10K package type thing. So I think that's really cool. The winter final table of the Borgata main, um, the player who got second, he actually sat in, and he's an online player. So it's pretty cool to see, I guess, their plan playing out and seeing these guys. And I remember when I was getting into poker too, I was watching like, all these other sites running promotions, and they would be like have a camera on them and be like, this is our online qualifier,
Yeah,
and this is how he's doing. And you're kind of rooting for the guy, right? Because like you don't know who he is or how good or what they're whether they're playing for fun, for money, whatever the case may be. But they, it's always fun to just root for that guy because you're like, oh, this is like a big spot for him. It's bigger than usual, and you just want the guy to win. So I think it'd be cool if maybe Borgata can get a little camera crew having their online qualifiers, so people can sweat along with them because it is a big spot, especially for
yeah,
online guys. The buy-ins aren't as big, so
that's a good idea.
He's
We have a
also
great.
ran.
Go ahead.
What? Sorry to jump in, but you guys also ran a $25. One person gets a $2,500 seat, and it's a $25 buy-in. One of our friends who would never ever be able to afford, well, right now with his bankroll, a $2,500 buy-in, or even a $250 satellite to get there. He sat it in off of $25, and like it's going to be so fun to root for him in that, and it's cool. Like the giving those opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, I love the satellite system. It's robust, and the idea to be able to get in a big tournament for a little, and we root for them. They're thrilled. I mean, I meet these qualifiers out in Vegas for the ARIA event. I remember we have these like players parties, and I'm talking to this never been to Vegas, and she's at the ARIA playing at 3,500. Like, just thrilled to be there. That's a great story, and obviously we root for those people, and I love giving everyone an opportunity to have that, whether it be your professional online player who's mostly plays online, or the recreational player who spins it up from a $5 ticket. I think it's great that everybody has the chance to play championship caliber live events in Las Vegas or Borgata, wherever it may be.
Absolutely. And it's probably rewarding for you to have those experiences, to meet those people. And you're seeing two completely different aisles where, you're sitting at a 100K just surrounded by all serious players. And then, there's this big $3,500 main event where you're meeting people who sat it in and people who are really excited. And you're an ambassador for the site where people sat it in and had all these opportunities, and you're involved in the process. Um, yeah, I think that has to be very rewarding, and probably, it's more than just slapping a patch on. It's like you're getting at an actual, you're seeing the results from, I guess, what you're representing and what you're doing for the site.
Yeah, yeah, it
Um,
feels good. I've definitely come full circle on that, where I remember being 19 years old, winning a satellite for $100, going to Aussie Millions or whatever, and seeing Eric Seidel and being like, "Wow, you can't believe you're there." So to be on the
yeah,
other side of it after 20 years is kind of I'm very grateful for the experience and just lucky.
I guess that, yeah, and it's amazing. That leaves me, just to wrap up. What is what are your goals, I guess, for the remainder of your career and in this, crazy life that we live? And what legacy do you want to leave behind for, you know, poker players and also how your family remembers you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Poker wise, I just want to continue competing at the highest level and continue to win titles. Main event run, that's on my mind. That's obviously you can't control that, but that's something that I have on my goal list. Like to have some success at the highest stakes in the limit. That's eluded me a little bit. I don't play a ton of those events, but winning a 50K, 100K, something along those lines. Would like to do that. Um, More titles. I like to win another WPT. I'd like to win more bracelets, that type of thing. As for legacy and family, I just want to show my family, my children, that you can go out, do something you love, compete, and that can be your job. That just kind of train, practice, and then go leave it all out there, and that's possible. And if you work hard at something and you're disciplined and you can compete, that you can do anything.
Darren, thank you so much for coming on and, giving us the privilege of your 2 hours of time. It means a lot to us and
Of
what
course, man.
this podcast is going to mean for us. So, Lucas, do you have any final thoughts?
Similar to what you said, it's really awesome being able to talk to you, um, someone who plays in our pool who's really at the top of his game. Even um, even though you're only a screen name on MGM, it really is um, kind of that being able to compete with you and being able to play with you. It really is. It's an honor and it's really fun and I also enjoy the battle. So
Thank you, man.
um, yeah, what's next for Darren? What's your next live stop looking like?
Got a little spring break with the kids here, and then I will go to U.S. Poker Open at Aria April 13th, I think. About 10 days there. Play 10Ks and 15K, 25K. So play about 10 events there.
Nice. All right, man. Best of luck. We will be uh hopefully you make an FT and we'll be able to sweat you there.
Awesome.
Um, thanks, Darren, for your time. Really appreciate
Of
it.
course, man. See you guys online.
Yes.
Best of luck.